perspectives and experience routes. So you explore a museum different ways. On the left here is the Royal Ontario Museum. They chose to have icons throughout, which were family focused. So if you're going around with your children, then you can look for the drawing and their key items that you can read throughout the exhibition. The other two is the CSI Traveling Exhibition in Singapore History Museum, and both of them have different ways of looking at things. You can either experience it in CSI, you can experience it as a policeman or as an investigator or a medical professional, and there's different stories that you can learn and experience. And this is also a great way to have people come back, because they can come back and see it a different way and learn a different way. So that's a great way for repeat visitation. So hands-on and minds-on and well-programmed technology. Technology is expensive, but if you do it cleverly and in a great way, it's a great way for learning through interaction, and that goes back to one of the learning styles that Maria was talking about earlier. There's both multimedia on the left, but also, you know, touching things and learning things that way. Right.
And it can be very simple, but you know, there's some. I can't tell you how much it means to be able to touch something. That whether it's a replica, or perhaps if you have multiples of one kind of object, it's great to be able to use that as an education collection, bring it out into the gallery, let people touch things. The touching is so important, trying on things, and that isn't very expensive to do. That's what's key to having successful interaction like that. Multimedia is great, but it can be very expensive, and it can create a lot of white noise around you if there's too much media. So really, it should be really well planned out. So you're really thinking about multimedia should be used as a way of saying the only way to tell this story is to use media. It's the best way to do it. The best way to tell this story is by touching. The best way to tell this other story is the artifact within a case. So always thinking about what's the best way to communicate this event. And I think hands-on is just, it's really, really quite important to museums today.
So sustainability, also, it's not just learning from the past, but it's preparing for the future. And a lot of sustainability right now is about preserving the environment, but it's not just that. It's keeping your history, keeping the stories, keeping the passion, and all those different things. So there's educators and school groups in that learn and share that passion, and then they grow up and share it with their children. But there's also keeping the environment and our responsibility that way as well. So engaging visitors by presenting issues in a place for their voice. Again, this is using the exhibition as a forum for people to present their ideas and thoughts, and having a direct dialogue with the museum staff. So it's not just the museum presenting information to you, but you have an outlet to give your thoughts back.
This is a great example for Constitution Hill in Johannesburg, where the prisons were turned into a museum and visitor experience for tourists as well as residents. And as you go through, there's a lot of open-ended questions. So the museum is speaking directly to the visitor. There is no right answer. It's simply, what is your perspective? What is your experience? Do you have a direct experience or an indirect experience? And being able to become a part of the debate is what's important. So how can we use the exhibition to create debate and bring opportunities to talk about hot topics, important topics that people want to know about. Again, going back to that first slide, people think that archives, museums, cultural places are authentic. They are places where you can get the right answer. So if there is an important issue in the newspaper in your community, what better place to know that you might get some answers or some good debate, but at your local cultural institution. So there's a role for museums to play if that's your inclination as an institution.
So power of a place, how a site is a powerful immersive artifact in itself. For example, the Equerry building here has its own history, and the historic part of the building is told through our exhibit, but it's, you know, things happened here. This is actually a historical artifact that you can touch and experience and be inside. It is actually history where it happened. Thinking about strategic alliances, either leveraging local industries or community groups, heritage groups or societies to share collections or stories or resources or things like that. There's opportunities for partnerships and collaboration with other institutions. For example, the Paris Museum Pass, they have, I think it's a 2, 4, and 8-day pass, and you can pay a range of money for it depending on how long it is, and there's a whole list of institutions that you can go to for that 2, 4, or 8 days as many times as you want. And so they've all sort of worked together, and you just pay one lump sum and you can take the time you want to go and travel. And a lot of different places are doing that, not just in Paris.
And that comes back to these issues of accessibility. Maybe it's not quite free, but it's a bargain, it's a value. And again, the institutions are working together to build attendance and working together to bring people to all of those different places. So it's important that institutions aren't always being competitive with each other, but really they're partners, building a cultural community. So you want to find opportunities to leverage any of that when possible.
And then, of course, using the media. There's social networks out there and print and television in order to share all your information. Finally, the different ideas. Sorry, no, this isn't the last one. Different ways of tourism. You know, there's a lot of different ways that tourism is popular right now. It's not just, you know, sun and sand, but there's heritage, there's cultural. There's creativity tourism. On the bottom right there, Waterloo does a quilt festival, and they get over 35,000 people a year that come in and come to this quilt festival in Waterloo. There's ecotourism, agricultural tourism, culinary tourism, people that just want to hear first voice stories, and of course special events, concerts, theater, plays, things like that.
So as much as our places are about our resident populations and our school groups and bringing our communities in, we also have tourists that are visiting our cities, and we want to be able to draw them to us. Well, how do we do that? It's not just open it and they will come. Perhaps there are opportunities to market to specific groups, and that's what this is about, because there are people who are looking for unique experiences. They look for heritage tours. They look for first voice tours because it speaks to them. So if you can somehow get on these routes, it becomes very lucrative for your institution if you can bring these specialized tour groups to you and get on their radar to bring them to you.
Using the building as a portal, so as a hub or a gateway or a place for orientation or a visitor center, where you go in and you learn about the site, and the area, and have people experience from inside then going out.
Right. And this is pretty important for a lot of institutions. They might not think of themselves as a portal or as a hub, but perhaps there are opportunities for you to market other places within the country, within the city, not only your other partners, but access these areas. Dr. Versteeg was talking about, building an immersive experience right on the archaeological site. Maybe we might not be able to do that, but perhaps can we use reconstructions around the site as a gateway to accessing that information? And maybe there's places elsewhere in that country, around the world, that it can become that way. And again, that's leveraging partnerships and being a good partner to your other institutions in the area.